We're recording this today. And I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to be here to talk about age friendly. It's a very important topic and near and dear to me. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'll go a little bit through what today will look like, and then we'll have our panelists introduce themselves. So I am Stephanie Osnes. I am a program developer from Dancing Sky Area Agency on Aging. We are one of 6 area agencies on aging in the state of Minnesota, and we are a program of the Northwest Regional Development Commission. We serve older adults, caregivers, and persons with disabilities, as well as home and community-based services in our 21 counties. So on the development team, which I'm a part of, we work with providers to develop services or expand existing services for older adults and their caregivers. We also provide ongoing support, technical assistance to our providers, and work with communities to increase awareness around Alzheimer's and dementia, as well as helping our neighbors become age friendly. Today, we are here again to talk about age friendly. So this is recorded. For roll call, I'm going to ask if people can type in their name, as well as the organization that they're a part of and the community that they live in. And we'll just take that for some knowledge as to who's here with us today. I'm going to give a little brief explanation around age friendly, and then again, we'll jump to our panelists. So not everybody knows this, but we have more than 1 million Minnesotans that are age 65 plus. That is more than the number of school-age children for the first time in our state's history. That's a lot of people. In 2030, our baby boomers will turn 85, and one of 5 Minnesotans will be over the age of 65. So it's important to note that even though we are living longer, some of our structures, as well as preferences as we age, can change. And so over time, we want to take a look at those physical, social, and environmental infrastructures. So in 2019, Minnesota Age Friendly kind of started when Governor Tim Walz signed the Executive Order 1938 for an Age Friendly Minnesota Council. In 2020, Age Friendly Council was developed, and the 8 domains or 8 recommendations were made. In 2021, the legislation on Age Friendly Minnesota in special session passed, and in 2022, Minnesota became the 10th state to join the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities, which is great. And in 2023, we developed the age-friendly legislation agenda. There is a webinar that we did in May called Age Friendly 101 that we can go, or you guys can go and access on our Dancing Sky website, which I will put in the chat. That just gives a little bit more of a background as to what age friendly is, and also talks about what the state is working on. This panel, this will be a very casual discussion, if you will. We are not here to debate or argue. And the purpose is really to bring everyone together to talk about age friendly and dementia friendly, as well as communities coming together to engage in meaningful discussions and be able to ask questions and generate ideas. So with that, I will have the panel introduce themselves. They will be giving us their name, their organization, the name and title of the initiative that they are involved in, if that is not also their organization, and then the location and what year they are. So I will go ahead and I will ask Connie Carmichael to go ahead and give her introduction.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Connie Carmichael. I'm the director for the Living at Home of the Park Rapids area. So we cover all of Hubbard County, a little bit of Eastern Becker, and a little bit of Northern Wadena County. I don't really have a name. We're Dementia Friendly Park Rapids, but we cover all those areas. We are located in Park Rapids. I gave you the location. And then what year or part of our process is our initiative in? I can't really give you a year of what we're in because it's forever. That's what we think. We're constantly building these relationships. But we started probably about 5 years ago. You know, everything is pre and post COVID for me, so I can't remember, but it was a couple, 3 years before COVID. So That's it. And I have a more to share, but later on in the program.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you for being here today. All right, Lisa Dabrowski.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Dabrowski. I work for Canute Nelson in Alexandria, Minnesota. And I serve on the Committee for Lakes Area Age Friendly and its Dementia Friendly Initiative. Today, I'll be focusing more on the Dementia Friendly Initiative as we chat. Our Dementia Friendly Initiative started convening in December of 2021. So we're about a year and a half in. The first 6 months or so, we're mostly planning and getting to know the needs of our community. So we've been working on projects for, I'd say, about a year now. So still really new, still learning, and I'm looking forward to learning from others today as well.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's go with Jay Hoppola.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Stephanie. Good to see some familiar faces and names out there. I'm Jay Hoppola with AARP here in Minnesota. And we're, of course, a big membership association, and we do a lot of different work on many different initiatives. You know, on the federal level, we're fighting to protect Social Security and Medicare and many other policies that impact older adults. And then increasingly in a recent decade, I guess is the way to describe it, we have been much more focused on local government, and we're the organization that operates the network of age-friendly communities. So I am the liaison here between our program nationally and through our state office to the now 19 Minnesota communities that have joined our network. And I'll just say from the get-go here that we've even published reports about how dementia-friendly and age-friendly can work together. So one way or another, we'll get you access to that information, and we'll be talking about it until noon.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. All right, Lindsay Sand.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lindsay Sand. I also work for Canute Nelson. I serve as the Vice President of Population Health, and Canute Nelson serves throughout West and Central Minnesota through a variety of services for seniors. Today, I'm here to represent Lakes Area Age Friendly. I sit on the board of directors for that organization. In Lakes Area Age Friendly, I just went back to pull Diane Lopez, our founder, one of the founders for Lakes Area Age Friendly, is on the call as well. So good morning, Diane. Our first action plan launched in 2018. And so we are working on our second action plan right now, and really excited about the future. So glad to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here again. So if you guys have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. We are going to have about 15 minutes at the end where people can unmute and we can answer those questions. If the question is relevant to what we're talking to, we might take that. So just so everyone's aware of how the question and answer will work. So I'm going to begin with some questions that we have prepped, and we will go from there. So the first question is, what is the difference between age-friendly and dementia-friendly? And I'm going to ask Lindsay Sand if you would like to give kind of a definition of maybe what age-friendly looks like, and then we can maybe partner with Lindsay to do that dementia-friendly part that we have.
Sounds good. So age-friendly, I think, morphs into what it needs to be for each region. Lakes Area Age Friendly in specifics launched in the Alexandria community, but we quickly realized that it needed to grow beyond that wall. And so we've really pushed now in the last year for us to be county-based. And now we serve 5 counties through our initiatives, including the counties of Douglas, Grant, Pope, Stevens, and Traverse counties. And we did that for a number of reasons, mostly because we across the board have organizations as well as resources that really serve all 5 counties as a typical entity. What our organization from an age-friendly standpoint looks like is really about advocacy, empowerment, and really getting the message out about what resources are available, as well as advocating for creation of resources for elders, and really helping to make sure that we're motivating our communities and counties forward with recognizing the growing needs for all really within the community of making it an age well area for us. Did that answer the question? Okay, good.
Lisa?
Sure, I will just add to part of our mission with Lakes Area Age Friendly is to support diverse wellness opportunities across the lifespan. And so for us at Lakes Area Age Friendly, the Dementia Friendly Initiative really is kind of a subcommittee of Lakes Area Age Friendly. And as our Lakes Area Age Friendly group as a whole really focuses on creating community events and activities that are inclusive and supportive for everyone across the lifespan, the Dementia Friendly Initiative really focuses more exclusively on creating a community that's supportive for our neighbors who are living with dementia or caring for someone with dementia. So it's kind of a subset. Certainly people who are living with dementia are included in Lakes Area Age Friendly, but the Dementia Initiative is a little bit more focused specifically for supporting and caring for people who are impacted by dementia.
Thank you, Lisa. Jay, did you have anything that you would like to add for the difference between age-friendly and dementia-friendly?
Sure. So I can just first speak technically about the network of age-friendly communities and what it's a commitment by local leaders and residents. So it's not a stamp of approval, so to speak. You might see an article in AARP, the magazine, about the best places to retire, and this is very different from that. So it's a prescribed process. So AARP is the United States affiliate for the global network of age-friendly communities, and that globally is operated by the World Health Organization. So here in the United States, we have about 750 communities, whether we're talking about the small town of Lind in Southwest Minnesota, or Minneapolis, or New York City, or villages and very rural counties and all over the country, along with now 10 states are members in that network. And by joining the network, the commitment is to a 5-year cycle. And like you heard, Alexandria has completed its first 5-year cycle and has started a second action planning process. But it's no rocket science. That 5-year cycle includes forming a local committee of leaders and residents who conduct an assessment. So whether it's a survey and it's a data collection about all different factors in community life that we call the 8 domains of livability, based on research over decades of operating this network that have to do with the built and physical environment. So your housing, your parks and public places, your transportation system. It has to do with the social environment. So how are older adults included in civic life? And then it's also the service environment. That's how I like to describe it. So do people have access to the information they need about aging services and other community features? And then how does the health system operate and serve people? So the first step is to do that assessment. The second step is to create an action plan. And then by the end of 5 years, implement the action plan and evaluate. By no means are any of the communities really trying to cover all of the 8 domains of livability. And I think as will come out through the discussion today, you'll see where Alexandria and the Lakes area are focused, as well as maybe some other places. And I'll just drop in the chat here a link to our report on how age-friendly and dementia-friendly fit together.
Thank you, Jay, for that. Connie Carmichael, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Not necessarily in that it's a comment to especially what Lisa said about dementia friendly being like a subset or a part of the bigger picture, sort of like Alzheimer's is one dementia under the whole umbrella of dementia. And I feel like that's kind of what we're doing, because as Jay said, you know, we're not signed on to be an age-friendly community as such, but our program is really the only senior program in the area that really focuses solely on seniors. And so we do a multitude of different programming, but we have a pretty good focus on dementia-friendly community and what does that look like? And I'm excited to talk about all the different things that we've done and had trouble with along the way.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's more of a process that is formal and informal, if you will. So there's really no wrong way to go about your ventures of being age friendly. Okay, the next question that we have is what was the main drive behind starting your age friendly or dementia friendly work in your communities or organizations? And Jay, I think I'm just gonna have you speak as broadly as you would like about this. Lisa, we'll start with you.
Our decision to start the Dementia Friendly Initiative really was influenced, I would say, by the people who serve on our Lakes Area Age Friendly Committee. Some of them had firsthand experience as family care partners, and many others were health and human service professionals who work with people whose lives have been touched by dementia. And I would say that our committee members really understood the prevalence and the significance of dementia in our community, and they wanted to do something to show their support for everyone who's been affected by it. We also looked at some of the statistics and applied them to our own community to kind of get a sense of what the impact might be locally. So nationally, on average, 1 in 10 people over 65 has dementia and 1 in 3 over 85. We know that our communities and our counties are aging, so we looked at those numbers within our own 65 and 85 plus populations to kind of understand how wide those segments of our populations were, and we knew that it was something that we had to do something about and to show our support for everyone in the community who's affected.
Thank you. And I think we'll just hop over to Lindsay to kind of complement that.
Sounds good. Well, and I, again, I can't speak for the founders of Lakes Area Age Friendly, but I can really speak to, I think, the motivation within the community. So much like the rest of the state, our rural communities are aging very rapidly. And I think much more rapidly even than some of our urban areas. And so within that recognition and then really recognizing the needs within the population, a really motivated group of individuals, Diane Lopez being one of those, really came together to say, hey, we have to do something to really recognize the needs. You know, as maybe some of you know, our area is really recognized as a tourism area. And so our slogan for Alexandria area is really a great place to live, work, and play. And really, I think we took it to analyze, is this really a great place to live for everyone? And are we making changes to make sure that we're changing with the times? Are our communities safe? Do our communities have the resources necessary? Are we coming together to truly recognize the needs and the growing needs of our seniors within the community? And so I think there was also a lot of different efforts going on, motivated by different organizations and whatnot, that had goal sets to try to reach out to our elders and ensure that we're offering great things within our community, but it lacked a kind of string to tie it all together. And so Lakes Area Age Friendly has really served as a platform for our counties, our community members, our service organizations and businesses within each of our areas to really pull us into one foundation and move us forward with one goal set of what we're trying to achieve, and really share resources as best we can now throughout the whole 5-county area of our focus. So I think again, really great visionary individuals who took the leap to make this happen, and knowing that this is exactly what we needed to glue us all together.
Thank you, Lindsay. Connie, would you like to comment?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main drive for us behind Dementia Friendly Community was we have a very strong caregiver support program within Living at Home already. I mean, we've grown so much in the last six or 7 years that we went from, supporting 10, 15 caregivers up to now we have over 130 caregivers on our list. And those are the ones that are actually physically signed up with our program. That doesn't include the thousands of other caregivers that we all know are out there. And I have one dedicated staff that just does caregiver support, although we're all certified as a caregiver coach through the Dancing Sky. I guess I don't know if that's where we're certified through, but that's where we took our training with. But we do have a dedicated staff for that. But our caseload just keeps growing and growing and growing. And we found that some of the things that caregivers were asking for, nobody really knew where to find those resources. And so we knew we needed to do something as a group, or as a kind of an initiative, if we will. So even before Dementia Friendly Community kind of was a thing, we had already formed a work group made up of many, many, many different people in our community, that includes, the CHI St. Joseph's and Essentia and Sanford and local law enforcement and the sheriff's office, Dancing Sky, all the senior apartment buildings, if you will. And it included caregivers. It included, we had one lady that was diagnosed with early dementia. And of course, senior nutrition and living at home. So we all talked together and said, oh, and it's interesting because I had one resident just off the street, if you will, that has time, he's retired. And he said to the group, how do we even know that dementia is a thing here? Right? And we were all like, we didn't even know how to answer that. So, and then the opportunities to apply for grants and those kinds of things. And we did surveys and those, and I'll speak to some of that a little bit later. But I think we always inherently knew we needed to do something. It's just, how do we go about it and who's going to do the work? So.
Thank you, Connie and Jay.
Yeah, I'll start with sort of the reason why AARP operates the program, so the big picture, and then I'll talk about some specific communities and just what I've heard from people about their motivations to join. So first of all, it definitely has to do with the aging demographics. So people are living longer. We know the baby boomers are a big part of our community. But also an issue here is that our built environment, the infrastructure, the transportation system, our houses that we live in, those outlast people's preferences and their needs as this generation has gotten older. So that's just the nature of the situation. And so along with that, it's been just my observation, and I have seen it with my own eyes, that it is extremely powerful to have this group of residents and professionals and local leaders working together, and they can make huge changes and make improvements that are great for the older generation. But of course, as we see with our own eyes, and we know it benefits young people and families and everyone in the community when you build things, whether it's systems or whether it's physical construction, when you build them with your older residents in mind. But it doesn't happen by itself. So we have age discrimination in a lot of sectors of community life. I mean, you pick up the newspaper and you might see that they're talking about economic development, and we need to attract a young workforce to this area, and we need the older people to get the heck out of here because they're living in all the homes that the young people need. So you see those kind of attitudes everywhere. And I'll use Rochester as an example, but it's Olmsted County that has joined our network of age-friendly communities. And where it started was that the state of Minnesota, probably 10 years ago, made this huge investment in the Destination Medical Center in Rochester, Minnesota. Billions of dollars of development funds going to the city and a nonprofit organization that administers the program. And so every day you pick up the newspaper in Rochester and they're talking about all the new buildings and apartments they're building to, handle the healthcare workforce there, all the new public, development projects, and the older residents just felt left out. And they said, well, all this money, all this tax money, all this activity, what good does that do me if I'm age 65, I've lived in Rochester all my life. I don't really care to go downtown the way that the workforce does. What does this do for me? And they were trying to get the attention of the decision makers to have meetings at their churches and community groups, but they weren't getting their attention. So a bunch of churches got together and said, okay, now we have hundreds of people who want you to come out and engage with us on how these investments are benefiting all residents, not just the young workforce. So they achieved that, and they built a better relationship with the DMC, they call it, the Destination Medical Center. And then through that organizing effort, they decided that what's next is they wanted to join the network of age-friendly communities. And so they've done that. In another example, I'll say Princeton, Minnesota. When I had initial meetings with the leaders there, people who work for the city, their first motivation was really about their tax base in their community. A couple of manufacturing plants had closed down, and they realized, our residents here, it's just a lot of, not only, but there are many, like a lot of smaller greater Minnesota communities, a lot of older folks live there, and they can't afford to have them moving elsewhere. So they needed to make improvements to attract more residents and keep their older residents there in Princeton because they're concerned about their tax base. I'll say, as my kind of last example specifically, there are many communities that have already been doing dementia friendly, or maybe they have, like, the health system has operated some public health initiative where they've already done a cycle of different improvements in a similar model, and they'll just say, what's next? And they have come upon, or they've heard about the network of age-friendly communities, which I'll summarize, really offers communities a framework to follow. So it's very open-ended. What's going on in the Lakes area there in Alexandria and the counties is very different than what's happening in Olmsted County or elsewhere, but at least it's a process to follow, so that makes things somewhat easy. It is access to the network of other age-friendly communities, so even though they're different, they're all learning from each other and sharing. It's about getting access to resources, whether it's the grant programs that these communities find out about, or just all the publications that we offer for free. And you don't have to be in our network to apply for grants or get the free publications, but it helps to just be aligned. So that's my next point, is it's alignment with what's going on at Dancing Sky, what's going on down the road in Alexandria, what's going on in state government and how they're planning and organizing. So that alignment is really important now here in Minnesota. And then finally, I'll say it is about branding in a sense. And if your mayor can stand up and say, look, we are an age-friendly community, we're committed to this, that in itself is an important message to send to residents and to make people feel included and welcome where you live. So it's all of those things.
Thank you, Jay. That was fantastic. Okay.
Thanks.
Our next question is, what are the top 2 or 3 things that your initiative is working on? And Lindsay, I'll start with you.
Sounds good. Well, I will allow Lisa to talk about the dementia-friendly aspect of our age-friendly work. But I think a couple of the things, or 3 of the things that we're really focused on are in regards to addressing senior isolation. Again, recognizing that we have a lot of rural communities and not everyone lives within the town or has ready access to resources. So really thinking through that as a challenge, in really thinking through transportation as well as socialization opportunities through programs like Men's Shed and Coffee Talk. So we're really exploring those at this point as to how can we bring these to our area and how can we make these resources viable? What do we need to do to get the foundation of these going? The other big part of it is disaster planning. So Alexandria and the Lakes area were hit really hard last year with a number of big storms, some decimating communities. And so I think the realization through that, which I think we already knew, but it kind of rose to the top, the cream of the top, was that we don't have a great opportunity or option of how to recognize those elders who might be stranded at home, needing resources, other than those that are service connected to another entity. And so we're really talking right now through steps of what we want to do to address disaster planning throughout our region, including education opportunities, resource deployment, and really thinking through what can we do as that next step to ensure that we're aware of those who might be at high risk living within the communities and how we can get support to them. The third area I want to highlight is something that we call connecting communities. It's really an idea of how do we continue to push for efficiencies and offer support to organizations and individuals trying to serve individuals within our community as they age. We are not immune to the workforce crisis that's been going on. And so, we recognize that there's a lot of demands on different organizations and how they're being served. And so how can we create efficiencies throughout our support network so that we're all coming together again to push for the same goals and really just get on the same page as to what we need to do as communities? And how do we again then look to offer unique opportunities for support that might already be available within the community and just need to be highlighted in some way, or maybe need to be created as kind of a support system to support the whole system as we go through. So that really aligns with our kind of growth strategy as well, as we've moved from Alexandria age friendly now to Lakes area age friendly, encompassing those 5 county areas, and what we might be able to do collaboratively to support the whole.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yes.
Lisa, I think we'll just jump to you for the dementia-friendly piece of that.
That sounds good. I would say that our main focus for the Dementia Friendly Initiative really has been on educating our community about dementia. I know last spring when we went out and we were talking with older adults in our communities, we realized that there really was some stigma around dementia, but that many people, or even most people, had a personal connection to dementia and really wanted to understand it better. And so we kind of realized that before we could even have more in-depth conversations or do more of a needs assessment around dementia, that we needed to lead with information and kind of break down some of those stigmas. So as a result, we've been doing Dementia Friends info sessions. And we also had a community event this past spring where we had a caregiver specialist come in, and she talked kind of about the experiences that people with dementia might have, kind of how their nervous system changes and what that means for them, as well as how to support people who are caring for loved ones with dementia, because they're coping with a lot of changes and a lot of stress too. Another focus I would say has been on gardening, and I think this kind of connects to what Lindsay said about social connection. In some of our early discussions last year, one of the suggestions that we got was to kind of use gardening almost as a medium to support meaningful activity. And as we learned more about it, we discovered that gardening can encourage social interaction. Some of the sensory properties with it can really spark conversations or memories. And we thought that this was important because we know that sometimes people who have dementia and their care partners don't always have the same opportunities to do things that are fun or that are really health promoting. And we thought it aligned really well with our mission at Lakes Area Age Friendly to support diverse wellness opportunities too. And so from that, we thought about how we could create some safe and accessible opportunities for people to garden without necessarily having the responsibility of maintaining full gardens. And I would say that these projects really have evolved to maybe be more age friendly. Because we're not limiting them to people who have dementia only, but we've still been really intentional as we kind of plan out those activities and those spaces to make sure that they're safe, and that they're supportive for people who maybe are living with dementia, as well as, just the general population who might want to be involved with it.
Thank you, Lisa. And Jay, I think we'll go over to you. Any top 2 or 3 things you want to highlight that AARP is focusing on in terms of age friendly?
Yeah, I'll definitely highlight housing as it's one of the 8 domains, so which cover a lot of ground. So a lot of communities focus in other areas, but when it comes to housing, what happens is when most communities do their assessment phase, they find out that everyone who lives there says housing is not affordable. It's not appropriate. If I wanted to move, I can't kind of find the type of house that I'd like to have. So it's always toward the top of the list for communities, but it's often not the one that they choose to focus on because it's hard. So everything else is, the other programs are great, but anyway, I'm getting off track. When it comes to housing, what I'm really excited about is that AARP finally produced a couple of resources that are going to be useful to these communities that know that housing is a difficult challenge to solve, but don't know where to start. And a couple of them are model ordinances. So the age-friendly committee can take these ordinances right down to City Hall and have a meeting with the zoning commissioner or with the city council members and say, look, everyone says that housing's a real problem here. And so one way that we can change that and start to influence it is by adopting ordinances that allow people more flexibility with their property, such as building accessory dwelling units, which are a second dwelling on a single family lot. So many communities are changing their ordinances to allow people to build a second unit so that, maybe the homeowner doesn't need the big single family house anymore. They can live in the smaller unit in the backyard and rent out the place to a family with more kids or something like that. Or it works vice versa. Maybe when my mom wants to come live with us, we could build a unit in our backyard if our city allowed for us to do that. So communities are doing that. And they're also changing their ordinances to increase density for sure. So I see a few people here from the Twin Cities and White Bear and Falcon Heights and Minneapolis and soon to be St. Paul will be increasing density in big ways, allowing a single family lot to put in a duplex or create a threeplex on their lot. And in St. Paul, for example, people who have property right near the light rail are going to be able to convert their properties into as many as 8 units if the proposal goes through. So we have model ordinances on how communities can make those kind of zoning changes in ways that work. And then the other important publication that we recently created is sort of a how-to guide, or at least it gives examples of how communities are paying for this. That's the big challenge is, okay, the city wants to get involved. They want people to start building more properties, but private developers are going to do what's profitable for them. In fact, Diane and I were at the city council meeting there in Alexandria, and that was the first order of business was some developer who wants to build a big senior living development, and they're looking for huge tax credits in order to achieve that type of profitability. So anyway, long story short, we have these publications that can help people not just understand the legal side of how an ordinance could be developed, but also the how-to side of how do we encourage and incentivize these type of housing developments.
Thank you, Jay. All right, our next question that we have is who were or are recognized as key players to start the efforts? and continue them forward, if you will. Oh, you know what, Connie? You did not answer the last question. I apologize. We're going to go back. Connie, will you please highlight the top 2 or 3 things that Park Rapids is
Yeah,
doing?
thanks. Yeah, because I have a few.
Yes, please do.
As we've been thinking. So I think the top 2 things that we've done this last year is we've started an afternoon out program, which is like a drop-in respite / memory cafe. So we do it once a month. We're hoping to do it at least twice a month once I bring on my caregiver support coach, who's coming on 30 hours a week starting in 2 weeks. We're so excited about that. But we've right out the gate, we had like 5 couples, so 10 people, and I think we're up to 12 or 14 now. And the only thing they need to tell us is if they're coming and if they're going to leave their loved one with us, so that we have a one-on-one volunteer for them as a drop-in respite type situation. But what we're finding is most people stay because we have so much fun. You know, they do music, they do exercise, they do reflection, they do a project, they do refreshments every single time. And so they've had a really, really good time. And we have great volunteers who are very engaged with that. So that's a huge success. And what we're working on with that is increasing how many people can come, because it's based on, you know, how many volunteers we get. And then adding an additional day. Wouldn't it be beautiful if we could do it weekly? I mean, that would be great. And then the other thing is our caregiver closet. I don't know if any of you have heard about our caregiver closet, and it's really open to anybody who needs it. Our focus, of course, is seniors and age friendly. But our caregiver closet, we started with a shelf in an office of donated, like a walker and a commode and maybe a set of crutches and a box of disposable undergarments. And within a very, very short amount of time, we are now renting a 14 by 30 climate storage space that's packed full. Plus now we had to add on another 10 by 10 just for overflow. It's crazy the amount of, and it's all donation driven. Nobody has to pay for anything to borrow from it. And everything that's in there has been donated to the caregiver closet. So that is a huge success. And we're open 2 days a week for that, 2 2-hour segments. We're hoping as we get volunteers that will increase. The other thing we're focusing on is education and awareness, right? To reduce that stigma. Isn't that kind of what we all do with dementia friendly and age friendly activities? So I want you all guys all to mark your calendars. So we had TIPA Snow last year in person here in Little Old Park Rapids. This year on October 6th, we have Dr. Terry Barclay from Health Partners. He is a dementia expert, a neurologist. He will be here October 6th this year. And next year, I'm happy to announce we secured TIPA Snow again. So that one is October 1st. So those are the kind of the big things. We have lots of little things, you know, expanding our homemaker program, expanding respite, you know, increasing our volunteer pool. All those kinds of things are ongoing. What I mentioned were kind of the highlights this last year.
Thank you, Connie. I'm glad we came back because those are really great highlights.
Me too, thanks.
Really excited for those events coming up. All right, so back to our other question, which was who were and are maybe your recognized key players as you started efforts and continue them forward. So Lindsay, I think we'll just start with you again.
Sounds good. I know that I've highlighted this already, but really motivated community members, I think, were really key to getting us off the ground. And individuals who really are well connected within the community as well and influential. So Diane Lopez, Catherine Labasser, who are our local kind of launching chair individuals, were instrumental with getting and motivating our communities forward. As a kind of, I think, a launching point as well is bringing together the representatives, who is serving elders in our community right now, who can provide a voice to what is going on and what the future may hold. Trying to bring in city officials, county officials as we go along as well, to really have their understanding and get their buy-in to some of the initiatives that we're working through. And then I would also say, of course, AARP, and I'm so glad Jay just put in the chat the livable the publications. That is such a huge and amazing resource. Jay, I think I ordered each one of those to come to me and look through. And I think I just handed them off to Lisa not long ago. But such an amazing resource to learn from others that have done this or have insight and ideas as to how we can really reshape our communities for the future. So I would say, I would also include other businesses, right? So we're all aging, we're all affected by aging, and we need the whole community to come together to support that. So some of our dementia-friendly activities has really been instrumental in helping to pull other partners in from the community to really participate and understand the importance of taking part in training, taking part in advocacy, and being proactive with how they're supporting our aging populations.
Thank you.
And Stephanie has been key as well as our local Dancing Sky Area Agency and Aging representative.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Lisa, do you want to add anything for the dementia side of that?
Sure. Our dementia-friendly initiative, I would say, really started with a small group of Lakes Area age-friendly members who were passionate about dementia and who were also willing and able to devote some time and maybe some serious time sometimes too to the initiative. A couple of those people, as I mentioned earlier, were care partners, and so they really understood the lived experience of dementia. And then from there, kind of as Lindsay mentioned, we identified key people from different sectors within our own community to involve and pull in. But really, instead of asking them to formally be part of our initiative and come to every meeting, we asked them to help kind of more selectively with projects that were relevant to their work. So for example, with the community education event that we did, we really relied on our county senior coordinators from our 5-county region to help us with that specific event. For some of the gardening projects, we've worked with a senior living complex in our area with our public health office. For the project we're working on right now, we've been partnering with the local YMCA and our local extension. So it's really kind of been about pulling people in when it's really relevant to them, so that we can be as respectful and efficient with their time too. And I think that's really helped us with getting buy-in and support from across different sectors with our dementia-friendly initiatives.
Thank you, Lisa. Jay, do you have anything that you would like to add for key players?
Yeah, for sure. I was glad to hear Lindsay say that the community members themselves are really important to the initiative. And we always say it's the 3 women. So whoever the 3 older women are in your community who are involved in everything, all the fundraisers, like Diane and Catherine and Carol, put those 3 women together and they're going to get things done. So that's a good one. And then I'll highlight higher education, whether it's a community college or whether it's a university, is really instrumental or in the early stages and throughout the process, because they can oftentimes add help with the assessment process. That's one of the first steps and challenges for everyone, is who's going to deal with all this data that we're collecting and help create a report. So higher ed is a key partner on that. I will also highlight, in Minnesota right now, because of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, our Department of Employment and Economic Development, through the Office of Broadband Deployment, nailed it, is dispersing millions of dollars in Minnesota. And they've set up what are called digital connection committees. And there are, I believe, 95 of them across the state of Minnesota. So these are organizations that have applied for some funding. Many received some funding to do engagement and research on the local level to figure out who needs internet service at their location, who needs maybe training or device help in these communities to help all Minnesotans get better connected online. And so those would be really great partnerships to have wherever you are, and hopefully you're in one of the places that includes these 95 digital connection committees. And then finally, I'll summarize by saying, yes, all the usual suspects should be a part of the initiative, whether it's the health system, the nonprofits that work in aging services and social services, all really important. But this is, it's a community initiative that's where aging services can lead. So getting the business community involved, getting others and everyone else involved. That's the point here. It's not just to work together on aging services.
Thank you, Jay. And Connie, would you like to comment or I'm sorry, key players that you had?
Yeah, well, I kind of spoke to that earlier, you know, that we have a really good partnership like with Canute Nelson and Dancing Sky. And then, you know, the hospital and the clinic and Sanford, all the usual players. Interesting though, we have a financial advisor. We have 2 of them on our committee. Now, keep in mind, we started this pre-COVID and then COVID hit, and then guess what? Everything kind of fell apart. So we're kind of just getting going again with that whole thing. But one thing, I don't know where else it fits on here, and I would just like to point out that when we first got going, we did a survey. Our whole program is kind of based on what that survey told us. It was really interesting. We surveyed about 50 different people in all sectors of caregivers, people with dementia, medical, financial, caregiver, family caregivers, paid family caregivers, all kinds of people, sector-wide, 11 different sectors. And what was one of the questions on that survey was, where would you go for if you have questions? And like most people would say, where would you go? Probably your doctor. You know, if you have a specific need or you're concerned about a behavior, or you go to your doctor or your medical team, right? Can all agree that that's probably right? Guess what the medical professionals said? We don't know. We got lots of we don't knows, and we got a lot of living at home. A few senior linkage line, but overwhelmingly it was, I don't know. And we were like, oh my gosh. And that's when later on in the program here, I'll talk about our successes and what we've done so far as well. That was so profound for our entire team, is that even the medical professionals that work with people every single day, elders, had no idea what the resources available were to them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. On the flip side, we're going to talk about identifying any missing stakeholders that were hard to get to the table, if you will, depending on the projects that you were working on. Lindsay, you want to comment on that?
Sure. I think that there's been times where it's been difficult to get a variety of stakeholders to the table. But as Lisa kind of had said, if we find something that allows people to see what their role is in the big picture, usually we can get them to the table because they are motivated to try and help and support the cause. It's just them needing to realize, what is my place in all of this? I think throughout the aging sector, and I think, you know, a lot of programs have a lot of aging sector workers at the table helping to provide voice. We are really motivated to help on all levels and can see how everything can be connected, but we really have to paint a picture sometimes for others to say, what can I do? What is my role in all of this? And so, I would say, sometimes it's city officials, sometimes it's county officials. Sometimes it is the businesses. Sometimes it's the chamber really trying to say, we're wanting to help. We just don't know our role. And so I think that's one of the great challenges that we continue to have too, is who do we pull to the table and how do we get them to the table so they can see their worth in the effort? Because typically when we can paint that picture, they come. So I don't know that I answered that in a really great way, but I would say I think that there's a way to overcome all obstacles to get all people to the table.
I would agree with you. Thank you for that. Lisa, do you have anything you want to add on the dementia side?
I would say on the dementia side, probably one of our challenges and something that we need to work on more is getting somebody who is living with dementia involved on our committee to make sure that that voice really is represented. Because we do tend to be more on the side of being health and human service professionals who don't always have that who never have that lived experience. We do have care partners on our committee, but actually including people who are living with dementia, I think would be something that would be really powerful to have.
Thank you. Jay, any comment to that?
Yeah, I think in general, it's like different in different places, of course. And then I'll just highlight a couple ideas. One of which is that the process, the age-friendly process, has flexibility enough that you can focus where you have the resources available. So like communities that have someone from the YMCA or the community center on the committee are probably doing work around social connection. If you have the transportation planner on the committee, you're probably doing some work around transportation and mobility. And if you don't, that's somewhere that you might focus elsewhere. And then I think I forgot what I was going to say next. Oh, we have a resource that is in that library I posted, and the title's kind of funny. It's called Engaging the Community to Create Community. But it's a workbook that you can use to develop a strategy for how you're going to approach different stakeholders and such. So that's available to you.
Thank you for that. And Connie, do you have any comment on identifying any missing stakeholders?
Yeah, I love what Lindsay said, though. I think that's a great way to, you kind of have to do a little bit more pre-planning about who you want at the table and why you want them there. I think that was awesome. So I wrote that down. Thank you. But the people that we have the hardest time is city representation, whether it be the mayor or city council or whoever. I have other little work groups where we have some city council people come, but they're not super active. So I want to put a focus on that. And also retailers like grocery store clerks, store clerks that probably see more of what dementia is when caregivers and their care receivers come in. And sometimes caregivers are still driving, right? They're still taking care of business. And then, there's things that happen and they're like, oh my gosh. And so I would love to see an initiative where there was a specific training for retailers or, and especially grocery stores, because I think people, depends on what stage of dementia they're in. They might not be going into stores on Main Street to shop anymore, but they still are going to the grocery store. And I've seen that happen over and over. And I'm getting to the point now where I can pick out somebody who has some memory issues, who are either a solo or with somebody, but there's these dynamics. So those would be like two places that I would like to put a little bit more of a focus on for sure.
Hey, could I just follow up on that, please, Connie? First of all, what you said about having the financial planners involved is really interesting. And it's Olmsted County, for example, that their county public health office identified financial poverty as a health issue. And so they're focusing on that from a health perspective. I found that really interesting. And then second, I wanted to say with respect to difficulty working with the city employees or the county, that's normal. And especially during the pandemic, a lot of those staff that were working with age-friendly initiatives got reassigned to emergency management or other things. But the age-friendly committees have persisted, and they've done a really great job even during that years-long crisis of doing better to know where their elders are and to serve those elders as needed. So that's worked. But I always tell people, like, there's at least two ways to go about this with the city. Either they can be at the table learning about and addressing the issues that aging people have and the improvements that they ought to be making, or they can wait for the age-friendly committee to show up at the city council meeting and start demanding some action on things. So it can work both ways.
Thank all of you for your tips. Those are great. Okay, our next question is about funding. So do you have access to funding, or did you ever have access to funding? Lindsay and Lisa, I'm going to let you two take this first, and then we'll hop to Jay and Connie.
Lisa, do you want to start or do you want me to?
I can start.
You go for it.
Okay. For the Dementia Friendly Initiative, we have had access to a couple smaller grants. Last summer, we received an Act on Alls grant that we used to fund our community education event and then to print like materials for our Dementia Friends info sessions. And then we've also received some funds from SHIP, which is the Statewide Health Improvement Partnership, that we've been able to use to fund like our vegetable gardening materials. And they also gave us last year some funds to make some memory making kits that we used to have at community events like the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So Act on Alls and SHIP have been two sources of funding for us.
And I would say we had some dollars to get our efforts off the ground. And I think we continue to look for additional supports. One of the efforts that we're working through right now is taking that next step in our exemption status and really working through trying to be able to bring on a staff member who can oversee our efforts at all times. So looking for not only AARP dollars, state dollars, but additional dollars that can help us in our efforts. So kind of looking across the spectrum to what makes sense for us to be doing. There are quite a few opportunities for funding out there, especially now that we've gone through the pandemic. And I think we all realize, oh gosh, isolation is a huge issue. And how are we going to address the needs? And so there's been some new funding that I think has really percolated up over the course of the last several years. And hopefully we'll see that to continue as funding opportunities. So yeah, I mean, we did utilize foundational AARP dollars to get off the ground, but we are continuing to seek for funding into the future.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thanks for touching on that status. There is a lot that can go along with the 501c3 and getting dollars. So thank you for touching on that. All right, Jay, would you like to talk about some funding?
Sure. So almost half, between a third and a half of age-friendly communities, and I have said before, it's 750 of them across the country, have attracted some sort of investment into their initiative, whether it's state dollars or city dollars or private grants and donations. And Princeton is a fun example. They applied for a grant to receive one of our community challenge grants for a Surrey bike. So a Surrey bike is like at least four people, maybe more, can ride on it. And they use it to showcase their trails that are great around there in Princeton, but it's also something that a person could borrow and take to the grocery store if they wanted to. So they got that grant, and then they realized they didn't have anywhere to put it. So they started working with the city to try to find space, and some local businesses donated money to them. The I don't know if it's the Lions Club or some other civic group like that. On a monthly basis, they do donations to different organizations, and they got in line for some of that. And then they got like the high school shop class to build them a shed for the Surrey bike. And the Chamber of Commerce donated their printing services to make up some nice signage and to thank all the donors. So it can be very grassroots in that sense. Down in Northfield, and here's a shout out to, or a heads up to Newt Nelson. Down in Northfield, the big senior living organization donates money on a regular basis to the Age Friendly Initiative there in Northfield. And they got another AARP grant to purchase mobile seating units, like folding chairs essentially, that can be brought out to the park concerts and everything like that. But then they didn't have a way to carry them around. So one of the local credit unions donated a trailer so that they could haul their stuff around. But now, just to run down the funding opportunities at AARP, we will be offering or announcing very soon 8 community challenge grant recipients here in Minnesota for 2023. At least one of them is in Northwest Minnesota, so you'll be hearing about that. And the state of Minnesota will very soon be announcing the $2.9 million in community grants that they gave out in 2023. And the legislature did fund a $4.7 million for grants. I think they'll start probably next year. So that's even more money than the 2.9 million that is currently being dispersed. And then I'll tell you, there's going to still, like, the COVID relief dollars and grants are still out there. So whether it's the Minnesota Department of Transportation or Health or Human Services or Department of Health or the Office of Broadband Development has millions and millions of dollars coming to the local communities who are organized and prepared to receive it. That's been part of the problem with the COVID relief, is the money's out there, but the people who work at the city are like, don't have enough help to like apply for the funds. So it's still happening, and you can look into all of that as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing high level and grassroots. Some of those donations we forget about, and those matter. They really do. Connie, will you share funding?
Sure. So when we first started, I just applied for little grants like locally through our Operation Roundup grants at our electric company. And we have a local Park Rapids grant revolving fund. So I got, $1,500 here, $2,000 there, just to do some education and, the small things. And of course, I applied for the Dementia Friendly Community grants. I was turned down twice, and you get kind of deflated. And I wrote it the third time, and lo and behold, we got it. And what's really interesting to me is, I don't know how they choose all the winners. I know they have a committee of, who's going to get approved or not. It was basically the exact same grant every single time. And so I got it the third time. And when I was talking to the staff after the fact, they said, Connie, that grant was the second highest scored grant. And I'm like, it's the same grant that I applied for the first 2 times. How does that happen? But, I think it goes by who's looking at them. And did I have some typos that they didn't like? I don't know, different things like that. So my best advice is never give up, because the third time for us was the charm. But we did so much work out of that small it was $49,950, because if you keep it under 50,000, you don't have to have a match. We did that. But then after that, because I apply for Live Well at Home grant dollars as part of my core operating, and I include money into those grants, as well as my caregiver support grants, my Title III grants, to help with education and awareness. So even if you don't get a grant specific, like we made a commitment that Dementia Friendly Community is now like part of our core programming. It's who we are. And I think that helps a lot. And then we also ask the different partners in our community for like Teepa Snow and Dr. Terry Barclay and some of those big things that we're doing. Canute Nelson is, huge in supporting those kind of initiatives. Dancing Sky, Essentia Health, Sanford, the hospitals, they don't necessarily have the wherewithal or the money or the whatever to do it all themselves, but they're happy to contribute. Even the banks give me money. So it's just a matter of, and don't be afraid to say, or I'm not afraid to say, I hate asking for money. It is not in my wheelhouse, but I do it because I don't have a program if I don't. So those are the kinds of things with funding that are first and foremost in my brain.
Thank you, Connie. That was great. Okay, so for the sake of time, we're going to just wrap up the last two questions into one, and then we'll hop into Q&A. So the last two questions are, what projects and impacts has your initiative accomplished that you want to highlight? And then any words of wisdom that you might have. Well, Lindsay, we'll start with you.
Well, I think a couple of great things that have happened are the ability for us to really make sure that our resources are well known within the communities. And so if anything, helping to connect the dots for our elders and make sure that they are aware of the opportunities they have for support and their caregivers, of course, as well, has been a huge function of what we're trying to do. I think the other big thing is through the collaboration and really coming together. And we've had a couple of things going on that our Lakes Area Age Friendly has supported and participated in. But really coming together has allowed for us to really exercise organizational humility. And recognizing, again, much like Connie was saying, not one organization is going to be able to do everything, but coming together, we can do big things. And that's really what it should be about, is how do we propel things forward collaboratively, recognizing that we really are all essential in the big picture of how our communities are thriving and how we're supporting our seniors. So, I think that's those are the kind of the big wins, I would say. And words of wisdom, I would just say, I mean, it's worth the effort, and it's essential and it's timely, and we need to be putting focus to our aging communities and what we can do to make sure that they are supported well, because we're aging, our population is changing, so we need to be prepared for that. So just do it, organize, pull together. It'll become more efficient, and I think you'll help to reach goals much faster when you're collaboratively working together.
Thank you. Worth the effort. I would have to agree with you. Those were good words. Lisa.
I really agree with what Lindsay said too about collaboration, especially. I think if there's one other thing I would add, it's just that, for the dementia friendly side of things, we're about 1.5 years in. And it's, I think, just been important to remember that it is a learning process, and it's going to always take some reevaluation and adjustments as we go forward, because it is a learning process. But to also remember that it's okay to start small and to start simple, and to really be intentional about the work that you take on to make sure that it will be impactful and meet a need, but it's also something that you can sustain. It can be really exciting sometimes. So many ideas come forward, and you want to be able to support them all. But I think thinking about what maybe fits or fills the biggest need and what you can sustain has been something that I've had to go back to always.
Great words of advice. And Jay, impacts, initiatives, accomplishments, and words of wisdom.
Yeah, of course, across Minnesota and across the nation, tons of progress and important wins. And I'll say like this assessment phase and the action planning phase, where sometimes communities get really focused on that, and they say, well, we can't get involved in X, Y, and Z until we really decide on our priorities and make an action plan. But I see some of the biggest wins happening outside of that I'll use Northfield, for example. At the same time that they started Age Friendly, the city was going through their strategic planning process. and they had identified new immigrants and inclusion as a priority in their strategic plan because a lot of new immigrants are moving to Northfield. But that section of their strategy didn't say anything about age. So just by existing, the age-friendly committee there was able to influence the city in their strategic plan. And now their diversity and equity and inclusion plans include people of all ages, and it's called out. So they're focusing there, and that wasn't in their action plan. And it happens over and over again in these communities just by existing. In Olmsted County and Rochester, they're doing a big park board strategic plan, and the age-friendly committee is engaged in that process, making sure that older residents are represented in those type of community development projects. So I see that as a great benefit. Lindsay started off talking about making sure people know about the resources available to them. And I'll say that many communities are surprised by that they find out their residents, the professionals like you know what's available to everyone, but the residents themselves don't know what's out there. And then as far as a little bit of wisdom, if you call it that, it's just my experience that two kind of ideas are just important to these communities. One, as they go through their assessment phase where they're trying to survey residents, almost all of them at some point realize they're not reaching the hard to reach people and representing them, whether it's the more elderly and frail people who are harder to reach, or whether it's people who speak different languages or just have different cultural affiliations. So planning for that on the front end is a good idea wherever you are. And then I'll also say that with a 5-year process, that can be daunting for people as a commitment. So some of the communities have quite skillfully built in their succession planning when they're inviting others to join in the initiative, that the commitment isn't for them to go to 5 years worth of meetings, but just to get us through the assessment phase or get us through the action plan phase or get us through a project instead of a full 5-year commitment. So.
That's great advice. Thank you. And Connie, any impacts, initiatives, accomplishments, and wisdom?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of the big things that when we first started, in part of that grant, we got money to do TIPA Snow in like 2018 or 2019, and then we couldn't because of in 2020 COVID. And so we had to go all virtual. So that was interesting. We managed to do 3 of the Remember Project plays virtual. We were in that first group that I think there were 5 different communities that got a grant to be able to bring the Remember Project to our communities. And then we had to pivot virtual. That was an interesting process for them and for us, but we persevered and made it work. The other thing, when I spoke to the resources that our survey, so we came up with a resource guide specific to dementia. So a lot of communities have resource guides for their residents, but not specific for dementia. So we came up with one that has everything dementia, whether it's home cares or memory units or programs like mine, Senior Linkage Line, healthcare, whatever. And then of course on the back, it has the 10 signs of dementia. I can send this to you if there's anybody on the call today that's, looking at starting some sort of a dementia friendly community process and looking at what it looks like. The other thing that we did that was a huge success, brought us many volunteers and clients and caregivers, is we sent out a newsletter to 12,500 households. Our entire community of households got one of these newsletters. We got donations from it, although we weren't specifically asking for that. They did. We talked about donations if you want to support us. So I would highly recommend, that's a good way to let your community know you exist, right? And then of course, the things that we've tried and have failed on, different things like that. Like we had an iPad program for caregivers. It wasn't that great because a lot of our caregivers they don't want nothing to do with technology. They've heard horror stories, they're too old to learn, those kinds of things. And for some it was successful, but for the most, they didn't want any part of it. So we've pivoted that program too. And some of our volunteers now have our iPads, and we've downloaded the Sing program. So if they're doing respite for our people, they've got that access. I think my words of wisdom always is to remember, in age-friendly and dementia-friendly, I think a lot of people still, I encounter it every day, think about aging as sometimes doom and gloom, especially when you get to a certain level. My best advice is to bring joy every single day to everything you do. Even on the days where you feel like something is failing and not going well, always bring cheer and joy in your voice, on the phone, on Zoom meetings, everything you do, bring joy, because you know what? Joy is contagious. It truly, truly is. We see it and live it every single day. So that's it.
Thank you for that. I can see everybody smiling by that comment. You are right. Joy and smiles are contagious. Thank you. All right, so we are going to open it up for the next 7 minutes for questions. If anybody has any, you can take yourself off of mute or put it in the chat. Any questions for our lovely panelists?
If everybody wants to look into the chat, there are some links in there that everybody has, a few of our speakers have referenced. So it's kind of fun to click on the links and see what they're all about.
Well, in addition to any questions, maybe folks want to talk about just how they're doing similar work or where they might see themselves going next.
Not seeing anything. We got a quiet group, I guess. Not our panelists, so thank you guys for doing all of the talking today. If there aren't any other questions, what this will look like is this recording, and I'll include the links. Connie, if you want to send me those brochures, I'll send all of that out next week and people can have access to this recording and then all of the documents. I think that is really all that I have to kind of wrap us up here. I thank you guys again, panelists, for your time and your expertise. And yeah, it's been very informative on my end too. So I imagine that other people had some nuggets to take from it.
Stephanie,
Yes, please.
I was just going to tell you that we do have our Aging in Place program that we started at Habitat for Humanity in 5.5 years ago. And so it was September 2017. Since then, we've been able to do almost 70 projects and keep it sustainable through various grants, and very needed program. It's for individuals in Douglas County, Minnesota, and the individuals that are homeowners, so they have to own their own home, have homeowners insurance, which I've run into a couple that did not have homeowners insurance, and then we were not able to work on their home because of liability purposes. And it's not a free program. We call it a hand up, and it's not a handout. So we do pay a portion based on their income, but like I said, it's just the goal of the program is for the individuals to stay in their home longer. And our budget for each program is $7,500. So again, great program that I really, along with our homeownership program, I oversee the Aging in Place program, and hoping to continue next year. Like this year we did, the last 3 years, I think we've done 15 projects each year. Our goal was higher than that, but we had a turnover in our Aging in Place construction coordinator. So we're back on track, and hopefully we can do, another 20 projects for our next fiscal year. So it's exciting to be able to go into their homes and see their, as simple as a grab bar to as extensive as a bathroom remodel, and to see the importance of, and how appreciative they are. So it's exciting.
Thank you, Denise, for sharing that work that Habitat is doing. That's awesome. Kurt?
Yeah, I have one comment and one question. In terms of the comment, I would encourage folks to consider asking your local service groups for very specific help. it is a great door opener. Many of the local service organizations, service clubs, and by that I mean the four big international ones are in order of size: Lions, Rotary, Kiwanis, and then Optimist. There are plenty of civic organizations and fraternal organizations that can be involved as well, but those are the big four in terms of direct service within communities. And Lions obviously has the biggest footprint. I think we have about 17 or 18,000 Lions in the state of Minnesota alone. So don't be afraid to ask them for very doable pieces of projects that you'd like to see accomplished, because you will find that over time they will become valuable members of your support team, and that will go on. And it does have the possibility of growing to big projects as well, because the major service organizations have they have foundations which local districts can apply for, and I have been involved in several of those, so I know it's possible here. And you know, the community organizations are not the answer to a lot of the big funding and the big programs. We obviously need what you're doing, and with your connections up through county, state, and federal levels to keep this all together. But it's, again, it's several of you have mentioned collaboration, and that is the one thing I truly believe is absolutely necessary going forward for all of us. We have to find ways in this big puzzle that we live in to connect the dots. And the more dots we connect, the stronger the whole effort will become. So, and that's really the only reason that I'm here as part of this group and other groups locally, is it's just an effort to connect dots. So I would encourage you all to look at your local community service resources, to engage them, because the chances are pretty good most of them don't really know what you do. And it's a great opportunity to open a dialogue. And my question is, Diane, are you related to Jim Osmus? No? I guess not. Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you for putting on this wonderful hour and a half.
Yeah, thank you for the community service information. Yes, the Lions Clubs, all of those things are very important to these organizations. I would agree with you. Anyone else have anything? Otherwise, it's 12 o'clock on the dot right now. Okay. Well, I will let everybody get to their day. And again, thank you all so much for your time, and panelists, thanks for your nuggets and wisdom and everything along the way.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Stephanie.
Okay.